Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round one prop preview out there for the Masters tournament, which is our first major of the year, and this is the first prop preview that we've done on the channel for quite some time. So excited to be back after it with you guys. I'm going to go through everything you need to know out there for Thursday to get after all of your prop exposure. So that'll include a look at the weather forecast, some of the stat averages from last year's Masters, as well as the prop boards over there in Underdog and Prize Picks, how to attack some value in terms of stat averages. We'll take a look at some of the stats there on the PGA Tour site, do a deep dive in some of the golf databases out there as well, and even some sportsbook odds to give you a full-on process out there for your round one exposure. So first thing we're going to focus on would be the averages out there from last year, where you can see it played about 1.8 over par. So it was playing maybe a little bit harder than what we're used to seeing last year. Some of the changes to the course making it play longer. Also some new greens this year. You could have some fern greens there at 115 and 16. It's going to be the same, but the weather forecast does look a little bit calmer than what we had for 2024. So I would expect some of these averages to get a little bit better here over the first few rounds, especially with some of the rain that they got on Monday. They got a little bit over an inch of rain on Monday, some thunderstorms that came through the area. And so while they do have a sub-air system, which will suck out some of that moisture by the time we get to Thursday, it's still going to be a little bit softer than usual. So birdie average, I think it's going to be closer to like 3.25 per round. Bogey average, I think is going to go down a little bit, perhaps just to even a little bit below 4 per round. Your fairway average probably going to stay about the same. Maybe it goes slightly up to a little bit over 10 per round. And your green average, I do think is going to go up ever so slightly as well to maybe about 10.5 per round. So you're not talking about drastic changes, but a lot of that coming because of this forecast, which we're still a little bit far out to have 100% accurate forecast there for the first round. But you can see on this HRRR model, which is loaded in for the morning wave, it's going to be pretty cool over there, a little bit temperature-wise, a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing over there for the first, let's say, an hour or two of play. But by the time you get to mid-morning, it's in the 60s. You've got sub 8 miles an hour of sustained wind the entire way out there until about noon. And if we take a look at the NEM model, which has completely gone in out there for round number one, it's calm the entire day. So sure, a little bit cold for the first hour or so, but sub 7 miles an hour winds in this entire forecast. We go over here to the GFS, also one of the more accurate ones out there. You've got the same thing going on from the temperature perspective, but a little bit more wind over there in the afternoon. So it could get a little bit breezier over there in the PM hours, or if this NEM forecast is a little bit more accurate, maybe it's pretty calm all day. But in either way, I'd expect these averages to be a little bit easier out there for Thursday, which is of course very important when we talk about these props. So we're going to start over here on the Prize Pick side and kind of go category by category to give you an idea of how to attack these different types of categories. So we're going to start off with greens regulation, which they've got guys like Scotty Scheffler the whole way up at 12.5. And then you've got some of the senior tour guys, past champions at the Masters, at closer to like 8 fairway. So I'm trying to find one of those players for you. You can see Olathable there, Fred Couples over there at 8 greens regulation. But a lot of your mid-tier players, you've got at about 10.5 greens, which to go back to our stat averages, we had an average at about 10.3 per round last year. Might be closer to 10.5 with the softer conditions expected for the first round or so. So these guys at 10.5 are about what the field average is going to be. If you can find an elite tier iron player, could be a really good value for the over, because other elite tier iron players like Scotty, you have up there at 12.5, of course, but even some of your other guys that are well above average in the category, you've got projected here at 11.5. So if we can find somebody who's on that same kind of level in terms of talent level, but maybe projected lower, that's where you can find some of this line value here. And somebody that kind of comes to mind with that would be a Victor Hovland. You can see over here, Victor Hovland is at that 10.5 mark. So somebody that I did take for an over in my process. And we're going to go through a lot of different props here, so you don't necessarily have to enter all of them out there in your exposure. You're going to have 4, maybe even 5 props total to go out there and enter. So do what you please, right, out there with your exposure. Whether you want to take them all in one slip, go for broke out there, be my guest. I'm more of a 2-3 leg slip kind of guy myself, especially a lot of 2-man flexes that I'm going out, power plays I'm going out there and playing, but I never like to tell people what to do with their money. But over here with Victor Hovland, you've got a player that's been really solid over here with the iron play. If we take a look at the stats from this year, they haven't been overly elite in the category, so this is maybe the one data point that is kind of just like average over there in Victor. He's number 39 on tour, but When you zoom into the last 24 rounds in particular, which, by the way, includes 2 missed cuts for Viktor Hovland. So, of course, the win last time out is a huge plus in that category, but does have some lower tier performances in there. He's top 15 of anyone in this field. In fact, if you take out like the senior tour guys from the live tour that have a small sample size, he's top 10 of anyone that you have in this field in green percentage. So, for the year, he's already a top 25 player of guys that you have in this Masters field. If you just look at some of the recent form stuff, like I said, it gets even better for Hovland. So to expect him to have a slightly above average day is, I think, far from a crazy thing to ask for. And just to show you some of the stats over those last few events, you have the win over there with a 1.5 shots gained approach per round, but you've got him missing 4 of his last 6 cuts, one of those over there in the DP World Tour. But even over that stretch of golf, which is included with those greens regulation stats we were pulling, again, top 10 of all those PGA Tour players in the field. So even when he hasn't had his best stuff, top 10, top 20 finishes, the irons have been elite in that category. So now that he has the confidence off the wind, Augusta National has been a pretty good golf course for him over the last few starts as well. I really think all signs pointing up out there for Viktor Hovland. So he's an example of a green regulation player that you could look at, but that's not to say that there's only overs that you could look at in this category, because, you know, I can't spoil too much, of course, guys, for all the exposure I'm entering for all these different sites. Prize Picks Underdog over there with 3 balls and matchups. You can find all the slips I'm taking over on my Patreon page. Link in the description of the video to go out there and join over there. It's only $15 a month to get access to everything that I'm doing. It includes stat averages. I post weather reports over there on my Patreon as well to give you all the research that you need for every single slate. But like, I can't give away too much over there, but there are guys that are horrendous approach players that you have in this kind of field that are at 10.5 as well. And in fact, we were just looking at one dead in the eyes there on the board that I took for an under at that same sort of number. So elite tier guys like Hovland that have this kind of form lately, I'll lean into for that over aspect, but don't think that means I'm only looking for overs in that category. Next up, we got Fairway's hit over here. So you can see they have guys starting at 10.5 towards the top, 11.5 for your elite tier drivers. That would be like a Sepp Straka, Colin Moore, Kaba, but a lot of guys at 9.5 and 10. And if we go back to the averages from before, you can see that it was 9.95 per round in 2024. And with the rain that they got over there on Monday, wouldn't surprise me if that was a little bit over 10. So to have guys like, for example, a Jon Rahm at that sort of number is, I think, a little bit of a mistake, because if we go over here to Data Golf and show you what the stats have looked like for Rahm lately, they haven't been amazing with the accuracy, but if you go back a little bit further, they do get amazing when it comes to the accuracy with Rahm. He is one of the longest and straightest drivers that we have in the entire world. Over the last 5 events, he's gained in 3 of the last 5, which, like I said, isn't quite what he's used to out there, but it's still more positive more often than not. But you go to before that and look at all this dark blue that you have over there, and this is driving accuracy gained in all these fields. And you can see at certain stages, he was gaining 15, 16% out there to the field, averaging, if you zero it all out over the year, about 5% driving accuracy gain to the field, which at a field like this, at a golf course with 14 fairways, gives him a ton of push equity at that 10 number, right? That's about the field average, or at least projected field average over there for Thursday. And with that push equity in our back pocket, I want the over all day, right? More often than not, he's a player that goes out there and gains that accuracy to the field. And he's a past champion at this golf course as well. And you'll see over his last, 5 starts that you have there, he's had all top 10 finishes. In his worst start, I mean, boo-hoo out there for Jon Rahm, was at T9 over there at the Live Miami event. So dialed in would be an understatement over there with Jon Rahm's game, and just another example of a prop that you could take here. And I have mostly taken overs just because I think the pricing here is a little bit soft. There's been years where it's been over a 10.5 fairway average around Augusta National, usually when it's been softer than most. So we might even have well over a 10 fairway average for round number 1 for all we know. So I would mostly stick to overs over here in that category. But for some of the other ones I've taken, there is at least 1, maybe even 2 others that I've mixed in currently. I'd have to go back and check, but check those out on the Patreon as well. But next up, I got bogeys or worse, and to go back to that average, it was about 4.28 per round last year. I think it's going to lower significantly. Now, how low is the question? Is it going to go to like 3.5 per round? Probably not. I think it's going to be at least like 3.75, but around 4 is where I'm projecting it for round number 1. So you would think that there might be some overs to take, but they mostly have elite tier players on there. Like if you were looking for some overs, maybe it'd be like a Sun Sungjae, some of like the out of form guys at 3.5, like a Benny Ann that you could consider for that sort of mark. But the prop that I'm going to point out here and that I've actually entered at this point would be the Sepp Straka under on bogeys or worse, who, if we take a look at the averages, and by the way, we would look at the Jon Rahm averages, but he hasn't played on the PGA Tour for quite some time, so we don't have those to look at. I guess we could look at the live golf stuff, so actually we could do that here in a second, but let's look at the bogey avoidance stuff first. Sepp Straka here, you can see number 7 in all the PGA Tour in that category. And you've got a bunch of guys in this field that don't even qualify, that aren't even out there, that have small sample sizes, like a Danny Willett, for example. Like, sure, he's made 39 bogeys and he's played 342 holes, right? That's not nearly as many as a guy like Sepp Straka that's played twice as much golf and played the signature events that have more difficult golf courses. So, you take out Bryce Garnett's or Andrew Putnam's that aren't even in the field. He's top 5 out there in bogey avoidance. And then you take out guys like Kim and Willett that haven't played at all these really tough golf courses, and he's realistically number 3 on tour, right behind Scotty 1, 2, Colin Morikawa, and then Sepp Straka over there at number 3. And if you take a look at the rest of the pricing here, those elite tier bogey avoiders are down there at 3 per round. So like your Justin Thomases of the world, your Ludwig Bears, right? He ranks out even better than those sort of players this year. And Sepp Straka has been in some of the best form of anyone out there on the PGA Tour. So I wouldn't run and buy him for him to go out there and have a really good week. And because last time out he had a top 20 finish here, before that it was a top 30 finish for Sepp around Augusta National. He started off, I believe, with a missed cut, but has gotten progressively better every single year, is now playing the best golf of his life. I think that this is a perfect spot out there for that under on bogeys. And just to get the Jon Rahm stuff over there, let me see if I can find this live golf stuff real quick. So they have some stat averages over here in the live golf site, but they're not perfect about it. Okay, let's go to fairway hit percentage. I want to look at 2024, right? So let's go to last year and take a look at the category. Jon Rahm was number 11 on that tour. So yeah, only like 50 some players. So it's not like he's 11 of 150, 180 like it is on the PGA Tour, but he's still top 25% in that category. So for somebody that is over there at 10, the average, right, you'd expect him to cover that more often than most. So Victor, we showed you that for him. Same thing with a Sepp Straka. Let's go over here to the next category to break down, which is going to be birdies or better, which is the one category I really haven't played myself yet. So we're not going to have any exposure to really talk about. I'll give you a few ideas that I was floating throughout the brain myself, but it was about 3 per round last year. And I do think it's going to go up with the softer conditions, also some lower winds. 3.25 per round is probably where I'm projecting it, with potential to maybe get close to 3.5 per round. Now, if it gets close to 3.5 per round, there would be a lot of value on this board, but I'm kind of hesitant to say that. I have it closer to that 3.25 mark, which makes a lot of the pricing here make sense. So the one prop I was kind of thinking about that I'll at least throw out there for people to maybe consider themselves was an over on Wyndham Clark birdie. So I'm trying to find him here. There he is over there at 3.5. If we go over to Draftkings, where we can start to look at some of the sportsbook odds. By the way, over here in Draftkings, if we go to the bogey or worse lines, just to show you that over there with the lines that we've gone through, Sepp Straka, if we scroll down here, is minus 125 out there for the under. So slight plus EV value, right? You'd rather have minus 125 than minus 110 odds out there in that direction. And let's think, Jon Rahm doesn't have any odds posted. Same thing for Hovland. They don't have those JIR or fairway props posted on those sites quite yet. DraftKings has been posting them for some of the big events, so maybe they'll have those out sometime tomorrow. And Caesars too. Sometimes they've been posting those sort of lines. But at this kind of mark, we've got them for strokes and then for birdies over there on most of these sportsbook. So for a prop over here like Wyndham Clark, we can do a little bit of line shopping. And what you're going to see over here with Wyndham is that he's minus 135 for his over. So even more into that plus EV range than somebody like a Sepp Straka. And if we go to the averages from this year, you'll see that he hasn't quite been what he was last year, but he's number 13 out there on all the tour this year. So if you take the guys out that aren't even in this field, right, the guys that are small sample size guys, he's easily top 10 in all the PGA Tour. And if you go back to 2024, you'll see that he rates out towards the top as well. In fact, number 10 out there on the PGA Tour, right? You remove some of the small sample size guys like a Wesley Bryan, and he's top 7, top 8 out there on all the PGA Tour. So an elite tier birdie maker. And in his first time here last year, he did miss the cut, only averaged 2 birdies per round last year, which is far below his expectations. But conditions are going to be easier this time around. First timers notoriously have a really tough time around Augusta National. It's just tough with only a few practice days to go out there and learn all the intricacies to a difficult golf course like this. But now that he's had those few extra extra rounds of practice last year, a few actual tournament rounds to go out there and, put under his belt as well. I think that is going to be extremely useful, and he's one of the most aggressive, the best putters that you have out there in the PGA Tour, and he give me a little bit of that plus EV value, and that's when I'm going to go out there and bite for myself. So that's a prop that I took for the birdie lines, but just like the things that we had for greens, I think that there's some overs and some unders that you could play, because other guys here at 3.5 birdies aren't elite tier players in the category. Like a Billy Horschel's not elite in the category. Like you could potentially look to him for an under. A Benny Ann in a signature field like this, a major championship like the Masters, right? He'd be the kind of player I'd be looking for on an under on. Then maybe even like a Brian Harmon, a Jason Day, and they're not plus EV values. I do think with the soft conditions that I'm not really looking at a lot of fades. So that's why I haven't entered a whole lot here myself, because a lot of the guys I would have wanted to take for an over at 3.5 birdies are at 4. Guys like a JT, a Jordan Spieth, a Bryson DeChambeau up here at 4 birdies, even a John Rahm that's up there at that sort of number as well. If we could have gone those sort of players at 3.5 birdies, I would have been entering them for sure. And the reason why I'm a little bit scared to take overs over there at 4, and for some of the lower tier guys over there at 3.5, is the average last year was 3 per round. We are expecting it to get a little easier, but we don't know how much easier, right? It's going to be here in 2025. So that's why I might end up taking that Wyndham Clark prop at some point, but we'll have to see if I end up getting that exposure myself. And then the last category we're going to go through here, some of the other ones on here, like the hole 1, hole 2 shots, they're just a little bit too finicky to go through here. I'll still be looking at them, deep diving them over there for my Patreon members, but those come down to pin locations. If we don't have those quite yet, those will be posted on Wednesday. We'll have a better idea out there for those sort of props. And then this pars one is just ridiculous. That's why you have these other categories like bogeys, birdies to bet, that sort of thing. If you're betting on how many actual pars are players getting in a round, then call that 1-800 gambler numbers. All I've got to say for you on that sort of par bet. But let's go over here to strokes, and strokes is probably the one that most people like betting out there, but I'll say that it's the one without the biggest edge because it has so much action coming in on it, and you can see here the reason for that. Like Bryson's got 6.3K plays, 4K plays over there on a Rory, 4K plays over there on guys like a Justin Thomas there. Sportsbooks really adjust to those sort of action, and same thing here on Prize Picks Underdog, right? When you have all these people playing these sort of props, sometimes they bump in one direction or the other. Now, it hasn't happened quite yet, but this is why I don't always focus on strokes to go out there and start my process. Not to say that there can't be value here, and a lot of these sort of players aren't even posted on the sports books. So like if you go through the Draftkings lines for strokes, they don't have as much a selection up for that as compared to what you have for birdies, which is kind of surprising. I mean, you can see there in the birdie lines that we just went through, they had like everyone posted. I mean, we had to scroll through Narnia to get up there to the top there. For strokes lines, I should say, I mean, look how much shorter we scroll here. It's still quite a few. You still have probably at least half the field posted over here in DraftKings, but the other half you're kind of left in question marks on, which for some people might be a little intimidating. They like having those sportsbook odds to go through, but it does open up some potential value. And an example of that would be this Matt Fitzpatrick fade. So he's over here at 72.5 strokes. And what you'll know about Matt, if you've been paying attention to his recent form lately, is that it has been far from what we wanted over here on these stat averages. So let's go over here and bring up Matty Fitzpatrick over here on Data Golf so I can show you the exact numbers. But he's losing over his last 12 measured rounds, 1.6 strokes per round. So you can see the last 2 events have been by far the worst of the bunch. Did make the cut in top 25 at the API. So that's about as good as the form could get. But he did gain 2 strokes putting that week. So was kind of putting over his head. That's 2 strokes per round, by the way. So he gained nearly 8 strokes in that category. And even like his good weeks have been like, just make the cut in top 50 at Pebble, right? Make the cut at a small event, signature event like the Century, and only finish in the top 25. In a major championship field like this, I have a lot of concerns with Matt Fitzpatrick, and I'm expecting the scoring average. Now, I know we didn't mention that one out there a little bit before. I think it's going to be anywhere between like 0.75 over par and maybe 1 stroke over. I think it's going to be easier, like all these other categories that we've talked about, but it's not going to play like even or under par. This is still a major championship course. They choose pin locations that make it difficult even when you have good wind days like this. So I still think it'll play like a stroke over par, which means for somebody like Matty Fitz at 72.5, even if he shoots an even par round or goes out there, has an average day, that would be an over at that sort of number. number. And considering that he's losing 1.6 strokes gained per round over that recent sample size, right? That's why I'd be looking for that sort of a fade. And, if you look for his odds over here on these kind of sites, I already know it's not posted over there. You don't have them to look at. So you'd have to look at comparable players out there. And like Lucas Glover, for example, he's got similar odds to Matt Fitzpatrick this week. They're at the same portion of the board when it comes to their fantasy pricing out there as well. Glover's minus 140 for his over at 72.5, right? It's the same exact projection over there, and he's in much better form, and he's got good course history around Augusta National. So imagine somebody that's been leaking strokes to the field like a Matty Fitzpatrick, right? We don't have that exact line for comparison, but he'd be even better value out there towards the over, and minus 140 is already good enough value to go out there and want to play it for a quote-unquote plus EV prop, let alone if it's closer to like minus 170, minus 160, like you probably have here in a Matty Fitz. So those are 5 different props, one across each category that I like there on Prize Picks. An underdog, they have less of a selection, so what I really want to focus on here is actually going to be a missed cut prop, and that's going to be on Max Homa. So I have him up here for a 0.5 made cut prop. And if you go over here to FanDuel, so FanDuel has all the like made and missed cut props up, but we have to go the whole way to the left here to find it. Actually, I may have actually gone by it. That's my apologies there. There it is, the make and missed cut specials. Let's go past it and find the miscut ones over here. They do not have a lot of faith in Max Homa this week. In fact, his miscut prop is minus 166. It's not even just FanDuel. Draftkings has slightly more faith than what you have over there, but they're also expecting Mr. Homa to go out there and miss the cut. So to find that category, let's go over here and find Max Homa. You can see is minus 150 to go out there and miss the cut. Just like some of those other props we were talking about where you're finding that like minus 140 or more odds, and that's a quote unquote plus EV prop. Reason for that, by the way, is that these sports books know what they're doing. Like DraftKings, FanDuel, they stay open, they make money on these sports for a reason. If you have sites like DraftKings, like Prize Picks Underdog, right? Prop sites like this that are posting quote unquote 50-50 props. Now there's still a house edge to all of these, but quote unquote 50-50 props with all that much plus EV value, you can find a lot of plus EV props on these kind of sites. So if you take that, it's going to make you money in the long term entering these sort of props. And if you mix it in with any of the other props that we've gone through over here, which some of them will probably be available on Underdog at some point, so you can go out there and make it a 2-man slip. I can get even more exposure on that side of things. But everything we said over there on Prize Picks with all these different categories, you can take that same analysis over there to Underdog as well. So hopefully it gives you guys a good idea of how to go out there and attack your process. And as I was saying before, for every single piece of exposure that I'm entering, which by the way, last week for the last 2 rounds, we went 10-0 on our props. We went 4-0 on Saturday, went 6-0 over there on Sunday, 2 full sweeps in a row. Hopefully we can keep that momentum heading into this week. But if you want all of those props, make sure to check it out over there on the Patreon page. Again, link down below in the description to go out there and join on there. You not only get every single slip that I'm entering, also all the reasoning behind it, but wind reports, weather reports out there for every single round, stat averages for every single round out there on tour as well, to give you all the information you need to go out there and find some success. But other than that, best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are getting to. Hopefully we can crush it over there with the round 1 books over here on Thursday. And for our round 2 through 4 analysis, those will be on live streams over there on my channel, which would be about 2.5 hours after the rounds end each day. I'll go live talking about the pin location, stat averages from the day prior, and what to do out there for the next round of action. So on Thursday night, we'll be covering over there for round 2 and Friday's action, and so on and so forth throughout the rest of the weekend. So smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Subscribe so you guys don't miss any of that content to come, including those live streams for rounds 2 through 4, and best of luck with everything that you guys are going with.